Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Talks within the Nine-Sided Circle. Here we are. It is May 24th, 2020. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Noor Kyle, and currently I'm in Los Angeles. And you?
Me?
Yeah, you. What are you doing here?
Wandering around aimlessly, mindlessly. I'm Mushtaq Ali, coming to you from the great mosque of the backyard of my place in East Palo Alto.
Awesome. I love that background.
Yeah, I kind of like it too. It didn't start out looking this cool, but I worked on it.
All right, so
this is my Eid background, by the way.
It's perfect, perfectly suitable for that. So yeah, Eid Mubarak to everyone who celebrates. Eid. Happy Eid. And let's see. Before we get started, we're going to be talking about self-witnessing today. But, you know, as always, we got to do our YouTube spiel. You can subscribe if you want to see more of our content. You can like this video if you end up enjoying it. Dislike it if you hate it. Let us know. Leave a comment if you want to offer your input on what we discussed today, or if you have any feedback. And yeah, you can hit that notification bell to get notifications about when we post new content, which currently has been 7 days a week, and we're pretty proud of ourselves for that.
Yeah, patting on the back and everything.
Yes, or head pats. I like head pats. All right, so self-witnessing.
Self-witnessing.
Let's dig into that.
All right, what do you want to talk about self-witnessing?
We're going to talk about what it is, how it relates to the past 2 talks we've done, because all of these 3 talks together constitute a very important triad of practices that we are carrying forward from our Sufi tradition.
Yep. Now, in Arabic, they call this mushahada. Shahid is a witness. It's usually translated as martyr these days, but the original meaning of the word is a witness, somebody who is witness to something, to see something. So mushahada is the act of witnessing. And what are you witnessing? That's a good question. You are witnessing yourself and the world. Self-witnessing is the third section of this. In the first, in self-observation, primacy is placed on that which is given to consciousness. In the second practice, self-remembering, primacy is placed on consciousness itself without reference to the given. In self-witnessing, we do both at the same time, which, as you can imagine, if you've tried the first 2 practices, is not so easy. You got to get those first 2 practices down before you jump into this one. You can't just start here. So, self-observation, looking at the objects given to consciousness. Self-remembering, looking at the consciousness itself. Self-witnessing, literally being the observer that experiences both consciousness and the world at the same time and holds that in place. Does that make sense?
What do you think, guys? Thumbs up if it makes sense. Awesome. Lots of thumbs up.
You know the one I like? I like thumbs in the ears. That's for when you sound silly. So.
I assume you can expand on this, right? Or...
Oh, no, I'm just going to leave it here, man.
All right.
I'm just going to drop it right here, and that's it. That's all you need to know.
Mic drop. Peace.
Yes.
All right. So, for real, though.
For real.
Yes. Mustaqim asks, is this happening in the imagination?
No. It is not happening in the imagination. It is happening in the present moment. So, let's do this. Start by breathing. Everything starts with breathing. Don't breathe in any particular way. Just relax and let the air come in when it comes in and let it go out when it goes out. And keep your attention on your breathing. As the Zen guys say, just sit. Allow everything to be as it is. And now, allow yourself to continue to have your awareness on breath and notice the room around you. Notice that you're in a space. And so hold your breath. Don't hold your breath, hold your attention on your breath. You can hold your breath, but it doesn't work for very long. So hold your attention on your breath and your attention on the space that you're in. Notice where you see walls, where you see stuff, where you see a computer, whatever it is that is there, just be aware of that and your breath at the same time. And then, with your next breath, allow yourself to also be aware of yourself being aware. So hold the world in place with your breath and allow your attention to hold both you as observer and the world as observed at the same time. And you might find yourself switching back and forth between the two, and that's okay. It's a good start. But eventually you can experience yourself as the witness, the world as the witnessed, and your breath as the intermediary. And then shake it off. Yeah, that's self-witnessing in a nutshell. And if you're like most people, you were able to hold that for a second or two and then you got distracted and had to come back to it. But with practice, you can hold this for a significant amount of time. And one of the big differences between this and the other two practices is the other two practices are mostly done sitting. This you can do moving, and you want to do moving. Like the Theravadan practices of walking meditation. It's something similar to that. Or I have done the Sufi practice of bicycle riding meditation. That works very, very good. So, there you have it. That's exactly how it's done. It is no more than that, no less than that. It is finding the balance between the referential and the reflexive at the same time, and being in the proper place as the witness to both the referential and the reflexive. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Who feels like they managed to get a moment or two of that?
Do you want to share about it?
Yeah, say something about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I dare you.
How about you, Omar? I saw your hand.
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt I was doing that. I always have a question, of course, as to whether it's just very, very quickly going back. I mean, because as I attend to it, there's not a an interval between, say, attending to the external and attending to the internal. But I guess I keep wondering whether that's not happening anyway, kind of so fast that I'm not noticing it.
If it is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I suspect that at first, especially, that you are switching back and forth. You're sort of like alternating current.
Yeah.
And there's a point where it begins to happen so quickly that it doesn't matter. It's like it's moving at the speed of light.
Yeah.
Because the result is that perceived, flow in like a continuum through all of those layers of consciousness, or awareness rather.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm thinking about it in terms of the fact that, we are finite beings. So there may be some of that flipping back and forth. And as Mushtaq was saying, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as we are having like the impact of the experience of perceiving all of those awarenesses at once.
And what is that impact? I mean, is this, in a way, it seems kind of a very nice position to be in just in itself. But are you suggesting that this is a means to something else?
Yes.
And what is that something else?
Ultimate enlightenment.
Okay.
The reason that you do these is to break the hold of your mechanical nature on your being. If you do these 3 practices, it begins to do that. It loosens up the mechanisms that keep you channelized in the same thoughts and actions that you've been stuck in for the rest of your life, or for your whole life. That's its main purpose.
Okay, that makes sense.
Zoha, tell us.
I think my experience begins with, as you took us, begins with observing, sitting in the observer seat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that, oh, I'm still here. I'm not part of what I'm seeing. And then I start to experience the observer itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then witnessing this differentiation is what marks self-witnessing for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. How about you, Zainab? You knew I was going to call on you.
Yeah, I was happy you called Zoha. But he always comes to you. I can see when it works is when that mechanicalness is loosened up, and it, like in an action or an environment, in a dialogue, you see that mechanicalness is not how it always was, and then I know, oh, so that's working. The practice is working, because sometimes you can get caught up in going back and forth and you're not sure if you're doing it correctly, or if you're staying in the right zone, or it's not imagination. But then when you see the result, then you would know, okay, that's working, so let's go back to the practice.
And for you, one thing that you can do is practice this while you're doing your art.
Yes. Yes, the other day I was doing lines and going into that state.
Oh no, we lost our audio.
Yeah, your sound just went away. No sound. We'll wait till it gets back.
Yeah.
The mute is on.
Well, she just muted it. Yeah, it was doing this weird, like,
Bleep, bleep.
glitchy thing though. Yeah.
So Nancy, talk to us. What do you think?
Well, I can definitely pay attention to perceptions. I think I can pay attention to myself. I'm not sure I can do both at the same time.
That's how it is for most people. So you're not doing too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a matter of serious practice to be able to do this, to do the third part. You have to do a bunch of the first two and get really good at doing it.
Sorry, we were just popping Zainab back in.
Yeah.
So
Mushtaq,
practice.
what do
Yeah.
you think?
I think he's having a little bit of connection trouble. So
Okay.
we'll see if he can just chime in through talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to. It's difficult to hold them together. Only like get it like milliseconds of it. So I still need to practice it a lot.
Yep. Practice, start with the self-observation, practice that, then the self-remembering, then this. That's the order that you do them in for greatest success.
Yep.
I have a question though.
Yes.
Go for it.
How's this practice will like affect the like everyday life? Is it any like it will help the everyday life? Or?
Yes. If you do
How
these
so?
practices, what you will find in your everyday life where you would have reacted mechanically to a given stimulus, you'll find that not happening so much and you gain more choice. And more choice is good. So you're at work and somebody says something incredibly stupid, and whereas before you might have gotten angry, you go, oh, I don't need to get angry at that. That was just incredibly stupid. So you take a breath and you let it go. And that's not a bad thing.
Yes, yes.
So what do you think is the mechanism, Mushtaq, behind why that happens? I mean, each of these pieces is like you're doing the breath work, which allows you to create some sense of groundedness and take the emotional charge out of the thing.
Yes.
And then
and you have been practicing your self-observation. So you have been self-revelatory about the objects that are given to you in consciousness. And that includes your feelings towards different stimulus.
your patterning and all that.
Patterning, like you have a pattern, you go, you know, somebody comes up to you and says, I want you to do this work. And you look at it and you go, oh my God, I can't do this work. And then you go, wait a minute. What makes me think I can't do this work? Let me examine this. You know, what does this mean to me? Why did I create this thought that I can't do this thing? And you might chase it back for years at a time.
Is that a worthwhile practice, chasing it back?
It will happen whether it's worthwhile or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I found one. So, first grade, I was in this school, right? My first time being in this school, and the teacher, it was near Christmas, and the teacher put on the Nutcracker Suite, made everybody lie down and listen to the Nutcracker Suite. And then when it was done, she said, all right, take your crayons and take your paper and draw a picture from this. And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm feeling the music, and I'm in the first grade. And so I think transformation. So I build this big machine on my paper, and it's taking candy canes and sucking them in on one side and shooting them out as stars on the other.
Oh.
And then she had everybody hand them in, and then she started showing them. And there were what, probably 20 kids in the class, and there were 19 pictures of night skies with a nice little stars in them. And then there was mine. And I had been prepared to give my explanation of the meaning of this. And then when I saw that, I realized, oh my God, this is totally outside of the realm of their reality. Not in those words, those are the words of a first grader. But I realized that they were not going to understand the image that I had. And because of that, for years, I refused to share anything in class or let anybody see my artwork because I felt humiliated by it. Because the teacher said, and then there's this. Obviously, somebody wasn't paying attention. And that stuck with me on an unconscious level for a long time until I could root it out. And go, okay, first of all, they had no artistic sense. And second of all, I was in the first grade. Third of all, she was a lousy teacher. And I could let it go after that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that happened, but these are the kinds of things we root out. Yeah.
Everybody has a story like that. That's
right.
Not at all unusual in having that kind of experience. You probably have had it. I bet you everybody here has had something like that.
Yeah.
Where
likely so, yeah.
Yeah, where that you have done something beautiful and creative, and it's not received as that because people have a little narrow bandwidth, not big enough bandwidth.
Yeah. So practices like this allow us to
that came up for me when I first started doing self-observation, because I would observe this object that came up for me of not wanting to share my work or my process of my work with anybody. And it's like, where is this coming from? So you follow it back and you go, oh, there's that. And once you do that, you can begin letting it go. Just knowing it in and of itself does not mean that you let it go, but it means that you now have the ability to struggle against it, to see it when it comes up and go, oh, that's just that. You have made the unconscious conscious, and you can begin to work with it. So there's an example of how that works.
And this practice is a good support for that. What I think
it is a tool by which you can get down to it.
Yeah. Yep. Without totally freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There might be a little bit of freaking out, but
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Freak out.
When you're doing this practice, it is grounding. It kind of gives you a safe container to hold yourself in, hold all those experiences of your past in, and how it's manifesting for you now.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the real blessings of practices like this. So
That certainly raises my curiosity. You say, okay, I guess I'm curious about the rooting out process, all right? As you were describing it, it was basically coming to awareness of this past incident as being somehow still active in your current behavior. Now, I was originally going to ask you, it's just coming out.
This is what yogis call samskara, subliminal memory traces.
Right. And I was originally going to ask you whether just becoming aware of it was enough to root it out. But now I think I heard you suggest that there was more to it than that.
Yes.
And what is
being aware of it is not enough to root it out. Being aware of it means that you can begin to see the pattern as it begins to emerge.
Right.
You need particular skills to stop the pattern at its emergence.
And what would that be like?
That would be like an entirely different lecture.
Okay. All right.
but I mean, I can take note.
It's going to happen.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'll hold that thought then. The other, there was another comment that came up to me. One of the things in that process of attending both to self and to the environment, to the external world, one of the things that sometimes happens to me, which kind of sabotages that, is I begin to create almost like a substitute for the self. It could be something like a mass in the head or something of that sort. And for a second, I'll think, well, that's me. And then there's also the external world, and of course, that takes me out of the awareness of the self. But it's for me at least, it's a very tempting diversion, I guess.
Yeah, and that's a good catch. And so your self-observation can help you notice that when it comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes up, you can stop it.
Right.
And Cherie.
Yes, I was going to say, we haven't forgotten about Cherie.
No, we do not forget about Cherie.
Oh, I was hoping you would.
Oh,
What
damn.
happened?
Alas, no.
For me, the observing is actually recognizing the stories I'm creating around an experience. So if somebody said something about my artwork and the shutting down, it's recognizing that I chose to shut down and that the story I'm creating around that is just a mental construct. Now that I'm older, I'm looking at those things and thinking, right, even today, we're having my feelings about cleaning up and everything, and I know it's a story. I know it's my mental construct that I am creating, to observe that and see that and say to myself, not even real. That's our joke at the moment from our Zen friends and our Tibetan Buddhist friends. We look at something and we create this story and the upset and everything, and then we look at each other and go, not even real. It's like watching television. You're so sucked into the story and you're feeling all the things that you're observing on the screen. Your life is like that. You're observing this on the screen of your mind, and then you can laugh at yourself and say, it's not even real. But right now, Mushtaq said a phrase to me, the suffering is real, but the very thing that you're agonizing over, not real. So it's like, stop it. What are you doing that for? The suffering is real. And the upset, I'm annoyed, I'm pissed off, I'm all of those things. Yeah, but hey, if I let go of the story about the cleaning up and everything, then move on. I've observed myself doing that. I've observed myself get pulled into that because of the mechanical habits and things I've created around cleaning and tidying and getting things done. And then someone goes and kicks over the water pail. That's what it feels like. You think you just crapped all over my efforts. And I feel undermined. I feel like, what was the point? I feel like giving up. I feel overwhelmed by that. And so recognizing that experience and not letting myself be overwhelmed, but recognizing, feel those feelings, observing those feelings, feeling the impact on the body, and then remind myself, not even real. Now, what's the choice? I mean, that's what Mushtaq said was correct, is that you have a choice. You have a choice about how long you're going to sit in the upset, or you can experience it momentarily, recognize it for what it is, get on with it, and laugh at yourself and say, next time I'm going to come out of that a bit quicker instead of staying in there all day.
Yep.
That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I think that definitely ties into what we're talking about observing the movements of, you know, our experience.
One thing I've noticed some of the time is that I can feel that I'm a larger self than my experience of being angry or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very useful observation.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that and writing it down, actually. So thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
when Noor actually makes a note of what you say, you know you said something important.
I mean, I'm a note taker. I tend to jot things down. So I also have a growly dog next to me. Sorry about that.
Sounds like a lion.
Yep. So thank you for sharing that, Nancy.
You're welcome. I think it's the most powerful thing I've got, but sometimes it isn't necessary. There were logistical difficulties for me with this convention, and I was pissed off enough that I was thinking, I'm just not going to bother with this thing at all.
Mm.
And, you know, I didn't like access the sense of a larger self. I just eventually hit a point of, does this actually make sense?
Yeah? Just what part of that were you thinking about when you said that to yourself?
What part? Well,
when you were saying, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But when you were talking about accessing a sense that you're bigger than just yourself, and you were saying that you were pissed off, and then you were thinking,
does this actually make sense?
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get back to.
Yeah, which is not related to a felt sense of a larger self, especially much. It's more like possibly being aware of a contracted self, which is not quite the same thing. And it's like, do I have to be like this?
Yeah. I get that. That's relatable. What do you think, Mushtaq?
I think that pretty much says it all for that.
Yep. There's definitely still, you know, observation and self-remembering taking place when you're looking at yourself and thinking, why am I contracting? Why am I shrinking down to be smaller than I really am? So thank you.
So there's one little part that I'm going to add, and I mentioned this in the first talk I did about this too, is that we can go from the Sufis of Central Asia down to India and look at something that's very useful and similar out of yoga for this. There is a practice called the Samkarana, which means the great doing. And we say prana, injyana, asana. Prana, injyana, asana. which means breath, movement, structure. Now, anybody who's done any of Scott Sonnen's work will recognize that phrase. And it's kind of fun that they come together like that. So what this means is, in order to really do your self-witnessing, you want your breath, your movement, and your structure to be in alignment. And notice that middle part, the movement. The first two, self-remembering, self-witnessing, or self-observation, don't really have movement as part of them. They don't really have structure as part of them either. But in self-witnessing, you want to put your structure together so that it is stable. When the Yoga Sutras talk about asana, they say that be able to sit with great comfort and stability. That's what it means. Your sitting is solid. It's comfortable. Your body is in alignment. The breath is the start of everything. It's incredibly important. And that's why the first thing you do in your self-witnessing is that you witness your breath. This goes back to the 8 precepts that we taught you with Hashtardam. Watch your breath. Breathe consciously. And movement is the key in this, because you want to be able to move in the world as you do this practice. You don't want to have to be consigned to sitting in a nice little room. As pretty as the room might be, you don't want to have to be stuck there. You want to be able to do this practice while moving in the world. And usually I recommend people start with walking. Then running perhaps, or biking, or dancing, or any of these things while you hold your position. And basically, you have to work this 3 with the other 3. With the breathing, the watching the outside, watching the inside. Am I making any kind of sense? Yes.
Yes, it is making a lot of sense, because I did years ago did some of Scott Sonnen's work, and one of the phrases he used a lot at that time was "let the movement breathe you."
Yes.
And I love that, because when you're letting the movement breathe you, it means like if you are bending over, you're compressing the body, so you're exhaling, and when you're lifting up, you're inhaling. And so every movement that you do, if you're going to throw something, you're going to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Every movement, even in the stretch therapy movement that I teach, it's like letting that movement breathe you, and then pause in that position and using that self-witnessing, observing, becoming fully aware of what is the sensation in your body, what's the sensation of the qualities of this particular stretch. But at the same time, if you're really observing, you're noticing the emotion that got tied up into that body part. So using the breath in that way, it's a wonderful way to get back into yourself and not float off somewhere. It's let the movement breathe you, and then everything seems to come in together.
Yeah. And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Scott will be the first person to tell you that he didn't really invent a whole lot of what he was, especially what he was teaching in the beginning, but he found a way to express it so that English speaking people could understand it. That was his biggest initial gift to the community, was the ability to speak about this stuff in our natural language.
I really enjoyed that part, and on top of that, I did a workshop with Steve Maxwell where he said, don't worry about the inhale. He said, exhale, exhale. Everything we were doing, exhale. And then you realize you're naturally inhaling.
Yes.
He said, it's because we're holding our breath all the time that it's making this difficult. If you just attend to consciously exhaling completely, the inhale will take care of itself. So that
right.
layered on another bit of awareness for me in the breath practice.
Exactly right. So, other thoughts, other questions? You're doing great. I'm interested in hearing what everybody has to say. And I'm not afraid of calling on you. So step on up. Noor, what do you think?
What do I think? I can speak from personal experience that I think I've undergone a lot of growth as a result of these 3 practices over the past few years. And it isn't easy. I mean, there's definitely, one of my hangups is a resistance to sticking with things that kind of make me look at the things that are difficult. And pushing through that has been rewarding. And it's kind of like a feedback loop in that even though there are parts of what comes up doing these practices that can be really difficult, the practices themselves make pushing through easier. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And the work is not done. Yeah.
The work is never done.
Yeah, right.
It's like laundry. No matter how many times you do it, you still got to do it.
Mm-hmm. And new stuff comes up and you just process it. And like we said, we'll be talking more about the unrooting process, but this is definitely the foundation of that work. Without this grounding stuff, that self-witnessing, self-observation, self-remembering, without the foundation that these practices build for you, unrooting the painful stuff becomes all the more challenging. It's scary, quite frankly. Painful.
All of the above.
Yeah. This is a resource in working through that. And the best part is it comes from inside of yourself. So that's what I have to say right now.
Yeah. And I think that that is a good place to end.
Mm-hmm.
So, any last thoughts from anybody? Nope.
Nope.
Well, then subscribe to us because we're incredibly cool. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Yeah.